Good morning, good afternoon. Hey, welcome to Stone Cold Truth Radio here on the Genesis Communications Network. I'm your host, Tyler Nixon, co-host, I should say. I'm going to be joining Roger regularly from now on here on Stone Cold Truth Radio, and it's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a fun time. Roger is slightly delayed. He's going to be with us here shortly. We're going to have a great show for you set up. I know we're going to have Ed Cox coming on, who is the son of former President Nixon, whose name I share and have a distant relationship to as well. What a week, folks. What a week. I got to tell you, coming out of the inauguration, you'd think there would be a lot of talk about what happened at the inauguration, but I think this is what we're going to see with the Donald Trump presidency, which is that the pace of action is so hard-hitting and fast that you're not even going to have a chance to think about some of these lesser issues that are brought up. The media yapping, the mainstream media yapping and yammering that goes on, the backbiting and so forth. They're not going to be able to get that message through. They're going to be swept away by the constant pace of Donald Trump's doing what he said he was going to do when he ran for president. And really, it's truly refreshing. My personal political lineage goes back to the 1984 campaign of Ronald Reagan, which was truly an amazing time to be involved in politics. I was very young. It was my first campaign. And when Reagan came into office, obviously it was in that era, and for the younger listeners who don't know, who didn't live through that era had a slower pace to everything. There wasn't the media information age pace of stories and information coming at you so fast. When you entered the first couple weeks of a new presidency after the inauguration, there was a bit of an afterglow, and some were more ambitious than others, but for the most part, things quieted down a little bit, and the administration got settled in. You got into the hearings for any cabinet appointments that were not going to be immediately confirmed, and it was nothing, folks, nothing like it is now, and has been just this past week. I mean, it feels like it's been the first 6 months almost of a presidency. I worked for the Speaker Newt Gingrich when he was Republican whip in the House of Representatives in late 1994, and was there when they launched the Contract with America, and that was a very fast-paced legislative calendar that was put together the first 100 days of the Contract with America. And I recall it was not frenzied, but certainly super fast-paced, and they wanted to get a lot of things done. But this is just in 1 week what we've seen come out of the White House, the contacts with foreign leaders, the developments with the executive orders that have been signed serially by President Trump have really, really had an impact. And I think it's going to be where we have the president's political opponents, the Democrat Party, and the mainstream media are just really not going to know how to deal with the pace and with the force with which President Trump is going to be enacting his agenda. And that's a good thing, because they have managed to turn what was the general media and news cycle into what is something I really don't appreciate or like, which is called the narrative, which is, we're having history, we're having events narrated to us rather than reported to us, which is extremely cynical, because it implies that you're not intelligent enough to actually understand what's going on. You need some narrator to tell you what's going on. So it's been an amazing week, really, and I think we're going to see a lot more to come. And President Trump has managed to confound his enemies, and many of his supporters are encouraged, certainly, that he is living up to what he has promised to do. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And I think this is stunning in and of itself. I mean, I have lived through numerous campaigns enough to know you hear the promises, you hear the pie in the sky, but when it comes down to it, where's the beef? They don't deliver. They backtrack. We've seen that with both Bushes, frankly. The first President Bush with the no new taxes. Wasn't a bigger pledge probably ever emblazoned in a presidential campaign than that 1988 campaign, which he proceeded to, within short order, cave to the Democrat Party and their desire to run taxes up, and it very much cost him his presidency. With President George W. Bush, we saw the the compassionate conservative with a limited foreign policy become the neoconservative war hawk, launching 2 wars overseas in the midst of an attack on our country. So Donald Trump is absolutely living up to what he said, and he's everything everything that we saw in the campaign, really. I mean, whatever the man is, he's absolutely transparent, I think, in the best ways. For any foibles that might be assigned to him, the bottom line is the man does what he says, and he's very shrewd, and he keeps outmaneuvering these the nattering nabobs, to quote Spiro Agnew, the sort of, as I said, yapping and yammering, backbiting elite political class that has dominated Washington, D.C., and really co-opted it from what should be a representative democracy and a constitutional republic in the United States. And it's going to be an amazing time, whatever you think. I've been involved in politics many years myself, and Roger Stone is really a titan in the political world, and I've read about him for years and years, and obviously having the name Nixon was not exactly a feather in my cap for many years. I recall back in the early years when I was a young kid, I'd tell Republican operatives and Republican campaign folks my name, and the first reaction was, of course, "Oh, you're going to change your name." And years later, after Obama, after both Bushes, I think, and Clinton, of course, I think Richard Nixon certainly looks like a Solon, looks like a wise man from another age. And Roger has always been the connection between that age in many ways to today's rough and tumble politics. Not that it wasn't rough and tumble back then, but I would say Roger Stone, in my estimation, as a friend and as someone who I've watched from afar and paid close attention to his prognostications and so forth, is absolutely an American political prophet. And we are really, I think, privileged, and I feel honored to be part of his communications channeling and his sort of inner circle, and to be able to speak to him, because I had been able to work closely with Roger just about 2 years ago this time, and President Trump, was talking to Roger frequently about what was going to, what Trump was going to do. Was he going to get in the race? And from the very beginning, Roger Stone had this election called. He knew exactly what was going to happen. And I guess, you've been in politics for at least, I guess, over just about coming on 50 years, as Roger has. You start to become a very wise, intuitive, and in this case, a prophetic individual. And Roger's is prescient, actually. He really just knew exactly what was coming, and he knows Trump very well. So he's a unique voice, truly unique voice, with inside perspectives on what is going on in the Trump presidency, what the next moves are. And he, of course, is a freedom fighter, mainly, above all, a freedom fighter. He's someone who believes in liberty. He's someone who believes in a constitutional republic, who does not believe in this ruling elite, the statist elite who would dominate and rule over us rather than have a self-governing federal republic, which was what our founders intended. And he absolutely really is bare knuckle, and we need that nowadays, folks, because let's not kid ourselves. The authoritarian statist left will stoop to no low in getting what they want. So welcome to the Stone Cold Truth Radio. We're going to take a little look at our commercial messages here, and we'll have Roger on shortly. Stay tuned. Week 1 plus 1 of the Trump presidency. Welcome to the Stone Cold Truth Radio here on the Genesis Communications Network. I'm your co-host, Tyler Nixon, friend of Roger Stone. I think any good Nixon is a friend of Roger Stone, as is vice versa is the case. It's been an amazing week. We have been able to see President Trump issue executive orders, take actions with regard to foreign leaders and in a number of fronts, and very much clarify what the foreign policy of the United States is going to be. And it mimics exactly what President Trump promised throughout the campaign. You cannot say the man is not consistent. Those who, the Trump haters, the ones who would attempt to nail this man for any indiscretion, are really reduced to, as I had said, to quoting former Vice President Spiro Agnew, reduced to being the nattering nabobs of negativity. Trump is a force in American politics unlike I think we've ever seen before. He really is a clarifier in the sense he cuts through the BS, and like him or not, he really does expose very much the hypocrisies of the mainstream media, of the ruling elite and that class, who would put themselves above us as our rulers rather than be representatives and an honest reporting media in a constitutional republic. Trump has taken really swift actions this week, and the bottom line is this: who remembers the Obama presidency? It feels like it might as well have been 1,000 years ago. Really, it was a vapid and dishonest enterprise from the beginning. Former President Obama was a thin-skinned egomaniac who really, his view of himself could not. I think really it amazes me when you kind of get on Twitter, you get on some of the comment threads that you have in Facebook and so forth, and it really just Trump has driven a lot of people off the edge, frankly. He is outmaneuvered, out-hustled, outworked, and outraged many of them. But the bottom line is that he really, really is doing what he said he was going to do. And, it really is clarifying, as I said. I think it's an amazing thing. It's a new day in American politics. We really have the opportunity to have a president who, like him or not, you know what he's going to do, you know where he stands, and he's not going to waffle on it. He's not going to half-step anything. So I want to bring in a very, very an honored guest that joining us here on the Stone Cold Truth Radio, and that it is Edward Cox, who is the current chairman of the New York Republican Party and son-in-law of former President Richard Nixon. He has been really a force in Republican politics in New York, and of course, having been the son of the president, has been a witness to history in so many ways. Mr. Cox, welcome to Stone Cold Truth Radio.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you. No, it was great to be a witness to history. Of course, candidate Trump was in New York, and that gave us a chance to interact with him in many ways, and it is just an incredible story. And you're right, I heard you said he has taken over this presidency, and Obama is way distance in the rearview mirror. It's quite incredible the way he has done it.
So what will be what do you think is going to be the effect of the cabinet in terms of, he's selected a cabinet that is really what he said he was going to select. Many really true patriotic Americans, great people. This is a realigning cabinet. These are not the types of folks who the Washington, D.C. establishment would be used to taking over any of these positions. Are there any that stand out to you in particular that are really going to...
Let me just, generally, he is is terrific at selecting the right person for the job. And you saw that in his campaign. I've never seen that right at the start. Your co-host, Roger Stone, was right there giving him the right advice. Run directly for the presidency. He was right. He was right. I got involved in that a little bit, too. Roger called me and told me that's advice he was giving. And then, of course, he had Corey Lewandowski, who was absolutely perfect for the primary. And then Paul Manafort, who was perfect for going through the convention and into the general election. And then Kellyanne Conway for the general election. I've never seen a campaign where there was such a good selection of people for each step of the way. As a result, he did it for 1/3 of the cost of Clinton, and course, was more successful. So, and he's doing the same thing with his cabinet. These are excellent picks. And he said, look, these people may have different opinions. Let them express their opinions, and then we'll work it out afterwards. And that's exactly what he's done. We saw him doing that with Mattis with respect to waterboarding. And he said, look, I defer to General Mattis on that. He's better than that. So you see how he is selecting a strong cabinet, a cabinet that this could be a true cabinet government in that sense, where he will, in the past it has been more the White House staff giving instructions to the cabinet. I think this is a cabinet where he's going to give them a lot of latitude to do their job, but they better damn well do it that well, or they're fired.
Sure thing. One of the amazing, astonishing charges against Trump was, though, he has no experience in government. He knows, he has never held an office before, but he has run a massive organization. He has built up the Trump Corporation, the Trump Organization, and that is no small feat. I mean, to be able to manage that size of an enterprise really is, it really, I think, was reflected in how swiftly and surely he has been able to put together his administration and have the right people and go through a very meticulous process of selecting these folks. What do you think the effect's going to be on the Republican Party and in the main, in the whole? I mean, it seems as though he's really brought it together. I mean, I think he initially in the primaries, everybody felt like he was going to be a divisive figure, but it seems to me like we're all on the same sheet of music in the GOP now. Well,
he seemed that he was divisive because, and again, this was completely unique, never done before, and maybe that's because it was the first time he's running. He reached out for what he needed to win the general election. That is the Reagan Democrats. Of course, you have to be candidate.
Gentlemen?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ed. I wanted to introduce our esteemed American political prophet, Roger Stone.
You are too kind, and Chairman Cox, you are too kind. Ed Cox has been my friend for, 40 years.
I remember I mentioned at the start here, Roch, I don't know if you heard me, that you gave Donald Trump the right advice.
No, you were very, very kind.
But he did. He did.
You are very kind. In the time we have left, there's one thing that fascinates me. In his term as vice president, Fidel Castro came to Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Dwight Eisenhower, of course, would not receive him. It would have been too formal. So Vice President Richard M. Nixon was assigned to sit down with this guy and figure out what makes him tick. Nixon met privately with Castro. They posed for pictures. It was a cordial meeting. Vice President Nixon wrote a memo to Ike that said, "This guy is a hardcore communist." We're running out of time. So, Ed, I want to revisit this because you know more about it than anyone.
Was when I visited with Castro in '87, that memo had come to light. We spent 4 hours together from midnight to 4 a.m. in the morning, and in the middle he blurted out, "How did Sheriff Pablo know I was a communist?"
Amen. There it is. Ed Cox, ladies and gentlemen. Many thanks, Ed.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Welcome back to the Stone Cold Truth. I'm finally in the saddle. I got delayed getting to the studio today because, as Mel Brooks used to say, affairs of state must take precedence over affairs of state. Hold on. So Tyler Nixon is a descendant of President Richard M. Nixon. The branch of Tyler's family landed in Delaware, moved through Pennsylvania to Ohio. And therefore, he was probably talking to a relative by law in the last segment. Privileged to have my friend Ed Cox, the crusading Republican state chairman of New York. He's got an uphill battle. It's the bluest state in the country, yet they put on a spirited campaign for favorite son, Donald Trump. Anyway, Tyler, quite a week for the new president, no?
It has been quite a week. But, Roger, I saw a story in the Wall Street Journal just the other day, and it piqued my curiosity. Maybe you can enlighten us. There's this new app called Signal, which encrypts your text messages. I presume I didn't get into the details of that. But you were quoted as having been hacked last September. You said it was hell. Can you just give us a little insight into that?
Sure. This was reported by WorldNet Daily and others. In all honesty, I was hacked. I didn't have much of a firewall up anyway. I'm not the most technologically proficient person. All that problem has now been solved. And they got into my email, which means they got into all my passcodes, which means they got into my bank account, the bank accounts of several of my coworkers. They got into my social media files. They got into my websites. But most importantly, they managed to erase all of my contacts.
Boy, wow.
30 years of private cell phone numbers, private home phone numbers, email addresses just gone into vapor. And therefore, and I realize that my communications are probably being monitored by the Soros flying monkeys like David Brock and other lemmings who want to soak some of these psycho leftist rich people into believing that Donald Trump can be stopped. The people who just lost the election despite a $1 billion to $270 million advantage. And the $1 billion, folks, is conservative because my guess is they hid more of that in soft dollars. Probably closer to $1.5 billion to $2 billion.
Easily. Well, speaking of fading into vapor, Ed Cox is concurred when I said the Obama presidency is like distant in the rearview mirror because of the pace of President Trump's actions. He's issued a number of executive orders this week, and my position is live by the sword, die by the sword. The entire Obama presidency is the most scurrilous of actions have been by executive order, and Trump is reversing those this week with just signing them one after another. You want to run through those, Roger, real quick and get your comments? I
think most importantly, Washington is in shock, and the mainstream media is just stepping up their attack on Trump because it's something Washington's never seen. A president who actually does what he said he was going to do. They've never seen this before.
Time doing it.
I mean, George H.W. Bush, read my lips, no new taxes, right, until he gave us a tax increase. They essentially ended Reaganism at that moment. Reaganism died at that moment.
Yeah,
so
then you had George W. Bush with the compassionate, conservative, limited foreign policy who launched 2 wars within a year.
And spent us into oblivion. I mean, I think it was John McCain, who I'm not a fan of these days, despite knowing him for many years. I think he once said, George W. Bush spent like a drunk sailor, but then that's an insult to drunk sailors.
Well, he certainly is. What would you say? I would say that one of the, he's embraced the abortion issue, certainly, within, I think that's very much the influence of Vice President Pence, which, as you said, Trump's doing everything he said, which makes him totally transparent. I mean, every volley that has been thrown at Trump throughout the last 2 years has borne out to be a bunch of BS, frankly. That he's a liar. He's not. He's just saying this. He's a chameleon. Whatever the case. I mean, he's absolutely transparent. He's following through. I mean, the federal hire freeze. That's it.
No. The repealing Obamacare, building the wall, changing the going after sanctuary cities, as he said he was going to. The resistance on that is palpable from the left. No, we don't want to deport criminals, murderers, rapists, and thugs. We don't want to do that. It's really quite extraordinary. And then, of course, Tyler, I think we have to say it. He's back. David Brock, perennial loser. A guy described by his own colleagues in the Clinton cabal as fucking weird. Direct quote from today's Daily Beast. Or described as batshit crazy in the WikiLeaks of John Podesta. So this lunatic is back with a $40 million budget. We're going to talk about it a little later. But essentially, he has scammed millions of dollars to dumb, wealthy, liberal donors, and now he's trying to sell them a program to impeach Donald Trump, who has done nothing impeachable. In fact, he's brought a lawsuit on which he hopes is the basis for this impeachment that has to do with the Trump family enriching itself emollients, which of course they aren't. Incredible, just incredible.
Now, David Brock, I mean, you want to talk about a chameleon, an execrable chameleon at that, who was a one-time writing the book against the Clintons until he was co-opted and bought off by Hillary Clinton and turned into a vituperative left-wing.
That is the irony, because his publisher paid him an enormous advance for a book that trashed Hillary. And then he produced the book, and it didn't trash Hillary. It was a suck-up job, even though he confirmed that she was the one who hired the heavy-handed private detectives and the nasty lawyers to threaten Bill's serial sexual assault victims. She was the one who directed the campaign of terror against these women. She bullied them. She intimidated them. In some cases, in the case of Juanita Broderick, to whom I have dedicated my book, by the way, Making the President 2016, my next New York Times bestseller, God willing. So, I never thought that they would successfully hide this entire narrative. It was bound to come out.
Well, David Brock, I mean, it really shows how low the Democratic Party and the left-wing chattering and control freak ruling establishment have sunk, that this man would be sort of the font of their future moving forward. He is under investigation.
I think I argued, Tyler, that he's just an opportunist. The professional Democrats think he's, quote, fat shit crazy or effing weird. Because I just remembered that we have certain FEC restrictions. The fact that this guy is trying to now cash in, he stiffed the IRS out of $1.2 million. Now, I've always been candid. I owe the IRS money, no question about it. And I have an agreement to pay them off. And it's painful every single month, and it's painful. But I paid down what I owe. People say, oh, Al Sharpton owes $5 million. Well, I don't care how much he owes. If he's paying it off based on his current cash flow, that's how the system works. That's not tax evasion. Tax evasion is when you don't show your income or you refuse to pay it. So I too am a victim of the IRS. I think that it's confiscatory. I'm a libertarian, but I also abide by the law. I think Brock's situation is quite different. I think he's stiffing the government out of the tax money. So,
go ahead, Roger.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I think we saw the Tea Party and the anti-Obama movement, the anti-national status movement, investigated, probed, just really targeted by the IRS over the years, and just in the worst ways. I would hope that President Trump, as magnanimous as he is, would not hold back in any way that whether within the Justice Department or elsewhere, into investigating the corruption that goes on, the violations of campaign laws.
I totally agree. Let's pick that up on the other side. Tyler Nixon, Roger Stone, you're here on the Stone Cold Truth. The Stone Zone, broadcasting from a undisclosed location in South Florida and a secret bunker in Denver, Colorado. You have Roger Stone and my longtime friend and activist Tyler Nixon, who for many years hosted an extremely popular talk show out of southern Delaware. A man who put Tommy Evans on the map, Tyler Nixon. So, we have on the line longtime Trump aide, Sam Nunberg, a man who worked very closely with the president in formulating his issue ideas and helping in a way, Sam Nunberg was played the exact same role that Pat Buchanan played for Richard Nixon, traveling aide and writer of everything, position papers, talking points, memos, and so on, at the president's direction. And he joins us now. Sam Nunberg, how is New York?
Oh, it's beautiful. What an honor to be on. I would really say I was a Roger Stone aide, not a Trump aide.
No, you're a Roger Stone friend. But
I'm a friend. I'm an acolyte.
Yeah, they sometimes call you that, but that would mean I would be responsible for everything you do. And we certainly know that's not the case. Sam, how do you assess the president's first week? And what do you make of this incredible story in the Washington Post in which some White House aides describe the president as a clueless child?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the good. I think it's very good to me that the Steve Bannon, Stephen Miller wing, that populist wing, has certainly had a large effect on these executive orders. As you and I know, nobody puts words in President Trump's mouth. Nobody gives him ideas. We give him suggestions. But I would say that, and you would agree with me, Roger, that the Bannon wing is, we were the early part of it. And I think that these executive orders, they're major change, and they're showing that Donald Trump is going to keep his campaign pledges, his promises, and his profile. Look, one of the things I think that he needs to do in order to get reelected is to make sure that he can stay above the fray, to make sure that even though he's our president, he's never a politician. And what is the best way to do that? The best way is to actually keep your promises and to get stuff done, as the president would say.
Yeah, there's no question. He went there at the inaugural ball, and I specifically heard him say, we're going to do things. And he is doing big things. And the Washington establishment types are out of their minds. They're not used to, a president who actually does what he's supposed to do.
And I think the most troubling that I've heard, when we get to the Washington Post article, was leaked audio. I wonder where that came from, at the RNC meet and greet in Philadelphia, where we had the quintessential establishment types, such as Lamar Alexander, who I know is a friend of yours, but someone who, in my mind, is very difficult to deal with on the Hill.
Well, he's a liberal Republican. I mean, he's the last of a breed. In Tennessee, they'd call him a moderate Republican. And he, of course, as you know, came out of the Nixon White House. Correct.
And he was saying that we cannot repeal Obamacare, that we need to do it in piecemeal. And as you know, I think that that Donald Trump is not going to accept that. He's going to give priorities, and he's going to give orders, and he's going to give certain principles and goals, and things are going to have to get done. And I think the Republicans on Capitol Hill are going to soon understand that he will hold them accountable as he will hold the Democrats accountable. Look, as you know, he's an independent. He may be a Republican, but he's really an independent. He's our first independent citizen president. And
I really cannot believe the way the media has tried to pick apart his meeting with Theresa May, the new Prime Minister of England. I mean, the UK has long been America's foremost ally in Europe, and it's the bulwark of the transatlantic alliance. We have a very significant sharing of intelligence, bases, military functions.
What the best part of it is, too, Roger, is I think that he is he's helping to usher in Brexit. He's helping to break the globalist control, the Merkel control of Europe.
Yes, there's no question. He's investing in a relationship that's almost dormant. The so-called special relationship, because it's in our interest to unite the English-speaking peoples, as Churchill would say.
And it's in our interest for England to be independent, frankly, from the EU. It's in our interest for Theresa May to be successful, because if she's not successful, then Donald Trump, will have trouble on the foreign arena. Now, on that,
but I also think, Sam, that this has a number of other benefits. First of all, you're rebuilding the defense relationship, which can occur both inside the redeployed NATO and outside through our bilateral relations. But even better, I think one of the best outcomes is a new trade deal between the two countries that are mutually beneficial and help promote and add economic development and, say, job creation in both countries.
And if the United States, and if Donald Trump and Theresa May are able to negotiate this new bilateral agreement, it will set a precedent where we can't hear from Canada, we can't hear from Mexico, we cannot hear from Asian countries that, we can't have bilateral agreements, that we can't have a new dawn with the Trump era of these trade deals, which, as you know, have weakened America, have weakened the middle class. That's one of the main reasons that Donald Trump was able to win the election. That's one of the main reasons he carried these counties, as you predicted, that no Republican has carried, some of them since 1980, but a lot of them since 1984. And to win these states, such as Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania. And I think that this is very important. And by the way, the Republicans are against this on Capitol Hill. Mitch McConnell has talked about opposing some of these deals, or trying to, I forget the term he used, but in other words, make them a little more comprehensive, which, as you and I know, is code speak for getting K Street to getting K Street to get all the goodies they want. On the Washington Post article, which you and I discussed and I just read, I do not think that came from Jared Kushner. I do not think that came from Steve Bannon. I think that there is a power struggle already forming in the White House. I hear that.
Well, Sam, I've got to remind you of one of Stone's rules: go to bed with dogs, wake up with fleas. I mean, when you open your White House to never-Trumpers or establishment Republicans who are never really for the man, this is what happens. Now, I don't think it is productive to talk about our internal laundry. I want to talk about the executive orders and the fact that Trump proved he is a man of action this week. Tyler, let's run through some of those orders just to prove our point.
Sure. First, there's the Obamacare order, which was just directing no action be taken or whatever they could do to the maximum extent permitted by law to minimize the impact of Obamacare. He basically has abandoned the TPP and has said he wants to renegotiate NAFTA. A federal hiring freeze, no more federal employees in the bloated leviathan that is the federal government.
Except for military.
Right, except for the military, of course, our national security.
And our intelligence.
Correct. The federal rule freeze, so no more, the Obama rush to force down the throats of the American public their obscure rules, a lot of them environmental regulations and so forth. No more of those being pushed through, and ideally we're going to see a rollback. The abortion global gag rule, where you're not going to have you're not going to be able to fund overseas groups or overseas funding to groups that are providing abortions or abortion referrals. And then, of course, immigration, big one there. The catch and release is done. That's over and done with. The border wall is going to be commence construction here, I'm sure, in short order. I don't think Trump being a builder, I don't think that anybody should have ever doubted, who has a half a brain, that was going to happen.
The Great Wall of Trump.
That's right. Keystone Pipeline, that's back on track, or is going to be back on track. I mean, that's just 1 week. We're talking 1 week and a day so far.
With the caveat that it will only be using American steel.
That's right.
To build the pipeline. I think these are genius. I think that these are, and I think that this is also going to be able, I also, frankly, Roger, and I don't know what I thought it was great optics. Forget meeting with the business leaders. Forget meeting with the auto, but meeting with the unions. Who would have ever thought that we would ever have a Republican president in our time, in my time, I know you've seen it in your time, who would have union leaders sitting a couple feet away from the Oval Office, having productive meetings.
It's very wise. The last president who was really able to do this was none other than Richard Milhouse Nixon. And even then, he could only reach out to the more conservative unions, the building trades, the Teamsters, while George Meany, the head of the AFL-CIO, was a relentless Nixon critic. No, Donald Trump has always had excellent relationships with the unions. You have to have good relationships with unions. If you're building anything in New York City, it's a union-dominated industry, and Trump has always enjoyed warm relations. There's no reason why he cannot win the support of more white Democrat union members as he won in record numbers in this election.
He always used to say to me, the union leaders have given up on me because the rank and file loves me.
Well, that's also true, but that was true of Reagan, that was true of Nixon. Both of them made
Roger Stone, New York Times best-selling author, brings you
I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
That Donald J. Trump has been selected as the Republican Party nominee for President of the United States.
And I promise you that I will not let you down. We will do a great job. We will do a great job. And I can only say that while the campaign is over, our work on this movement is now really just beginning.
The Making of the President 2016. How Donald Trump orchestrated a revolution. Find out more at StoneColdTruth.com. StoneColdTruth.com.
This program is brought to you by the Genesis Communications Network, a world leader in talk radio since 1998. Visit GCNlive.com today.
Welcome back to the Communications Network. I am your co-host, Tyler Nixon, Master of Ceremonies, host, American political prophet, and my friend, Roger Stone.
Tyler, you're effusive in your praise. I've said very clearly in my book that the man who deserves credit for the election of Donald Trump, the political upset, probably the biggest political upset in history, is none other than Donald J. Trump. I'm just happy to have been along for the ride. I wanted him to run since 1988 when I realized he had the size. I don't mean physical size. I don't mean stature. It's more than that. It's a certain charisma. It's a certain leadership quality. It's hard to define. Reagan had it. Nixon had it. John Connally had it. George H.W. Bush never had it. Yeah, it's very hard to describe, but I also thought he had, as we got into the 2000s, it was clear to me he was the only guy around with the cojones to take on a broken, rigged system and try to fix it, which is why he has come in for so much vituperation from the crazy left. Crazy left. No, he's not a Nazi. He's not a bigot. He is not reversing gay marriage. He is not sending gay people to concentration camps. That's all. I've seen that in print. It's idiocy. No, he's not going to suspend the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. He is going to govern the way that the Constitution dictates.
Sam,
anyway,
go ahead.
I think we still have Sam with us. Sam?
Yes, sir.
So let's wrap up the last week. Give me your finalized assessment. And then we're going to talk about the Making of the President 2016.
I think we have our first chief CEO as president. It's someone who is going to get things done and somebody who's going to clearly communicate to the American people. And I think he's going to stay genuine to himself, sometimes for worse, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. And I think that there's been a lot of smart political plays there, too. And I'd also like to compliment Mike Pence and Kellyanne Conway for showing up to the March for Life yesterday. I think that as, we talk about he's going to do something very good for the Republican Party in terms of making us pro-equal rights to gays, but I think in the LGBT community, but also to promote life. And I think that he's going to be able to continue to advance and help the Republican Party grow despite itself. So
no, I think this was one of Hillary Clinton's biggest mistakes. It was very clear she would not protect gay people from Islamic terrorism. She, where gays are being horrifically murdered, lynched, hung, thrown off the top of buildings because they're apostates in this under Islam. This is insanity. So,
and I also was very happy too, Roger, that I think it was genius in his interview with David Brody that he proclaimed that he's going to protect Christians being persecuted by the Islamists and, frankly, by regular Muslims in the Middle East. He's going to have exceptions to this refugee policy.
Yeah, no, Christians are being put in cages and burned to death, doused with gasoline and burned to death alive.
Raped, sold into slavery, and
I think they're about to find out that Donald Trump is a fighter.
And I think that the intelligence community and our national security and our military is going to finally be respected. Frankly, they weren't respected that much under the W. Bush presidency.
Well, look, I must tell you, I saw the president go to Langley, which I candidly not sure I would have done, but he needs to house clean at the CIA. I mean, anybody who was hired by John Brennan needs to be examined. Brennan predicted the Russian hacking before it allegedly happened. He told the president last week, essentially, watch your mouth. That was outrageous. Brennan was the CIA station chief in Riyadh, in Saudi. I think that's where they flipped him. He did the
Hajj, and only Muslims are allowed to do the Hajj, by the way.
Right. So he did the Hajj because he's a Wahhabist convert. He refused to be sworn with a Bible when he was sworn in as CIA director.
But one other thing I would just say, too, to your audience and to you, and I know you're going to be on top of this, and I know Tyler will, too, is we need to watch George Soros. He's openly predicting that Donald Trump will be a failure. He's trying to fight Brexit. I know for a fact he funded the lawsuit against Brexit in England. And
I mean, Tyler, you're an esteemed attorney. I don't quite get this. Soros is openly paying people who are advocating violence and death to the President of the United States. That has to be a federal crime.
Sure. Well, it's who's going to prosecute is the question. And
what's wrong with the U.S. Justice Department?
Well, let's hope that's the case. As I mentioned earlier, I hope that Trump isn't going to be worried about the optics, so to speak, of going after folks who are.
This guy is a former Nazi collaborator. They had marches with thousands of people in Macedonia and Hungary because of what he's done to those countries. He's a rapacious globalist.
A ghoul.
And he's 80 years old. In all honesty, he's breaking the law and be prosecuted.
And he's also going to try to tank the American market as well.
I mean, Trump needs to take him out. If he were playing by the rules, it would be different, but he's not. And most of his moves against the president are illegal. He was the funder of the violence at the Trump rallies. He's the funder of the lunatic David Brock, who we spoke of earlier, who's really, as his colleagues in the Clinton, or effing weird, as reported in today's Daily Beast. Perhaps the worst.
Yet, in the end, none of it worked.
And I just want to get one more suggestion into the White House, Roger, and I'm interested to see what you think about this. I think that he should start holding televised town halls with disenchanted Bernie Sanders voters. Because what you see Bernie Sanders doing right now and Elizabeth Warren, is they're trying to reach out and retake these people that, as you predicted, were going to either switch to Trump after the primary or we're going to stay home. And he's still won by a slim margin in these states. So I would hope that he's able to continue through the public engagement office or just continue to reach out to them and to hold some more town halls.
Sam, I was thinking about this today. You know what I'd like to see him do? I'd like to see him every Sunday, without any pre-announcement, show up at a large public golf course and play a couple rounds. And meet people and talk to people, which he thrives on, as you know. Yeah. But you do it by surprise. People will be delighted to meet the President of the United States. Now, none of the courses will be as good as the courses that he built. We know that. But I think it's a good way to both get in his golf game, which he loves, and keep in touch with the American people.
And one other thing I just wanted to say quickly is I know how you always told the story. You saw that he was bigger than life, and even Richard Nixon did. I know it's in your book that he should run for president. Very quickly, as you know, the first time I hadn't spoken to him since WrestleMania 5, but I think you remember when I called you. When he showed up to CPAC in 2011, I never seen anything like this for the Republican Party, the paparazzi following it. Even Rand Paul people in the audience there cheering him until, of course, he said Rand Paul can't win, but as Donald was saying, these are minor details. But, he was just a star. Something our party needed.
Ron Paul, not Rand Paul. And frankly, the president's been subsequently very praiseworthy of Dr. Paul.
And I think that, he's really going to help. He's really going to help re-engage our party, help remake it, and continue to promote, civic engagement, which is important.
Well, every Republican president since Lincoln has remade the party in his own image. We're talking about Theodore Roosevelt, Dwight Eisenhower, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan. Every successful Republican president has remade the party. We need to go back to being the party of mainstream, not Wall Street. We need to go back to being a working class, middle class party. Trump's the only one who can do that. I argue that you have a unique thing, a billionaire who's not an elitist.
Right.
A billionaire who can relate to the average guy and vice versa.
Right.
And I think that is the great opportunity. Sam Nunberg, Tyler Nixon, thanks for coming on to the Stone Cold Truth. We're broadcasting here from the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Bernie Sanders. And believe me, I know you may not believe me, but you gotta believe me. In my opinion, I like the Stone Cold Truth.
A nice promo from Senator Bernie Sanders. And we're back at the Stone Cold Truth. Joining us now is Dr. Jerome S. Corsi, who is a crusading investigative journalist who has written for a number of leading alt-right publications and alternative media publications. For my money, probably the most dogged and perceptive investigative reporter out there. My new book, The Making of the President, 2016, is dedicated to Dr. Corsi because I have learned so much just by being his friend. Dr. Corsi, welcome to the Stone Cold Truth. We seem to have a little problem with the phone, so we will continue. Tyler, I know you had some concerns. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Tyler, before Dr. Corsi joins us, you were concerned about this story in today's development that David Brock and his front group, Media Matters for America, have been talking to Facebook and Google behind the scenes, or Facebook behind the scenes, which is owned by Google, about limiting free speech, about shutting down, the alternative media.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is very concerning because of these social media is very much media nowadays. And let's face it, we know that the Silicon Valley so-and-sos, the information Illuminati, so to speak, they have an agenda. They were on board with Obama. They pushed Obama, and they have very much a collectivist view of the world.
But it's very disturbing to learn that David Brock, a criminal hitman, a money launderer, a man that the Clintonites described, is in touch with Google, helping them to identify sources.
What are they doing
news.
Talking to this man? I mean,
right,
even the Democrats are saying, please stop, quote, helping us.
Well, nobody knows. Nobody knows more about the nefarious dealings of Google than our guest, Dr. Jerome S. Corsi, who I just gave an incredibly lavish introduction to, and then we had to drop him. A little technical problem, but I believe he's with us now. Dr. Corsi, welcome to the Stone Cold Truth.
Thanks, Roger. Great to be with you.
As I said earlier, Jerry Corsi is one of the bravest and most perceptive kind of crusading investigative journalists in the country today. He's written for a broad cross-section of documents, and I know he's on top of this story. Just to set the table, Google was among the largest financial donors and backers of Hillary Clinton. Google enjoyed, because of their lavish contributions to Obama, a revolving door relationship where regulations were shaped to help their growth. And now suddenly they're trying to infiltrate the Trump White House like, here we are, Donald, we've been for you the whole time. Dr. Corsi, give us a fill.
Well, that's exactly right, Roger. I mean, if you take a close look at Google, it's very tightly aligned with the Democratic Party, not just in money, but ideology in terms of supporting the goals, the multicultural and all the other leftist goals that the LBGT agenda, I mean, it goes right down the list. Google's on board with the far left of the Democratic Party, with Obama and Hillary, in wanting to achieve those policy goals. And Google had a revolving door. It was in the White House more than any other group in terms of lobbyist groups, more appointments into the administration. I mean, a study that was done by the Campaign for Accountability showed in logs that the Obama administration met with Google representatives attending 427 meetings in the White House. The time Obama took office, 2009 through October 2005, that's a meeting every 5.8 days, more than one a week. About every 4.1 days, Google was meeting with the White House. It was a revolving door. The traffic between two directions, 251 people, either moved from Google into a government position or vice versa since Obama took office. And that's, again, an attempt to infiltrate Google into the government and the White House for policy decisions, for setting the Internet according to Google's desires, for getting special favors ruled to make Google's predominance and preeminence in the industry even stronger. And no other Internet company, in fact, virtually no other lobbyist got this kind of access from the Obama administration or the Clinton campaign.
It's really amazing the way they're trying to buddy up now. I read that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Ivanka Trump were seen dining with the brass from Apple. I think it's smart for Donald Trump to get copacetic with the Silicon Valley crowd, but let's just be mindful of who they are and the way they have manipulated their dominance in the media to the detriment of Donald Trump particularly and Republicans in general.
Well, I mean, it's clear that, Eric Schmidt, who heads Google, and is worth $11 billion, attended a meeting that Donald Trump held before he was inaugurated on December 14, 2016, with a group of tech industry executives. That was a meeting that included many different tech industry executives. That's fine. Google should be at the table with the others, but not alone. Then on January 17th, Politico reported that Eric Schmidt was seen unannounced at Trump Tower, and he met privately with Jared Kushner, who's Trump's real estate magnate son-in-law, married to Trump's daughter Ivanka, and Jared is now senior advisor to his father-in-law in the White House. And this kind of private meeting is what Google likes to do. In the White House, the Trump White House has already appointed two top Google executives into positions, the policy positions within the administration. So it looks like Eric Schmidt is already worming his way back into the Trump White House. And, we shouldn't forget that what we see from the WikiLeaks, Eric Schmidt was an advisor to Hillary. He was a top advisor to Hillary, one himself considered the main outside advisor. He even set up a company for Hillary to do her electronic data management.
Let's pick this up on the other side because I think people need to understand what's going on here. David Brock has told people that Google will take down 200 quote-unquote fake news sites that he delegates. Does the Trump White House know that? Designates. Does the Trump White House know that? We'll be right back with the Stone Cold Truth. Up next, Travis Irvine, stand-up comedian, libertarian, and all-around wise guy.
Roger Stone is a very interesting guy.
Reverend Jesse Jackson, thank you for your kind words. You're back at the Stone Cold Truth. I'm here with Tyler Nixon, I guess great nephew of Richard Milhouse Nixon. And we are still joined by Dr. Jerome Corsi. Let's kind of wrap up the Google issue. Jerry, this is, I think, a very, very dangerous thing, this attempt.
It's particularly dangerous, Roger, because of the ideological desires of Google. If Google gets into the Trump administration, we're going to see policies subtly being pushed that go back to the multicultural agenda, the identity politics, all of the LGBT, all the main themes that have dominated the far left of the Obama administration.
Look, in all honesty, I think a record number of gay people voted for Donald Trump. They no longer have that monopoly.
Oh, no, I'm not.
The sad thing about a lot of the major LGBT organizations, and I've been in touch with many of them because I'm a supporter of gay marriage as a libertarian. I'm a supporter of gay rights as a libertarian. They're more Democrat than they are gay.
Well, and I'm not meaning to in any way cast aspersions on the LGBT community. What I'm saying is the far left's use of the LGBT agenda to go to extreme politics.
I understand the point, but it's a fine point. Look, last night I was at a terrific bar in South Florida. Came in, and there were a bunch of 3 gay guys at the counter, all wearing Trump caps or Make America Great caps. So I just don't believe you can kind of brand everybody. I
agree with that wholeheartedly.
So, Dr. Corsi, thanks for joining us on the Stone Cold Truth. We'd like to have you back. I know that you're about to do big things, and maybe you can talk to us about it on our next visit.
I look forward to that, Roger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Roger, we got Travis Irvine's going to join us right now, and he's got a new gig at Mediaite, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and as well as I think he's got some interesting take on what the left can like about Trump's first week. Travis, are you with us?
Absolutely, guys. Good to be with you again.
You know, Travis, I've been thinking about this, and when it comes to your branding, because I think people know that you are a successful and very funny stand-up comedian. I have caught your act at the Cleveland Comedy Cave, among other places. But I think maybe taking a page from Donald Trump and Senator Marco Rubio, you should start calling yourself Lil Travis. What do you think?
I tried that when I was a kid, and it worked then. I don't know if it could still work now, but hey, I'm willing to try anything.
I mean, I saw Reince Priebus at the inauguration. He was very cordial. He looked great. I said, "That's a great suit, Reince. I wonder what it costs in a man's size." So, it is...
Roger, real quick, what did you wear to the inauguration? I'm curious.
Now, this is a key thing. I go by the absolute etiquette book. So, for the swearing in, the proper attire is called a morning suit. This is comprised of either a cravat-type tie or a four-in-hand and a waistcoat and a long swallowtail coat, the higher the one button of which, the slimmer every man looks. Also required white gloves and, of course, a top hat. And in my case, I went with a double-breasted waistcoat, sometimes called vests by Americans, that was dove gray, and, of course, striped trousers. That's required of some...
That was very JFK of you.
Well, this is the outfit Jack Kennedy got inaugurated in. This was the outfit that Ronald Reagan got inaugurated. This is what is appropriate. When Reagan wore this, so did all the leaders of Congress. But, as you know, the old rules have broken down. George H.W. Bush, the first president to be sworn in wearing a business suit and a tie. Doesn't that figure? And then subsequent presidents have gone in a different direction. I thought Trump looked great with the red tie, with the signature red tie. And frankly, I can't see him in this outfit. But I wore it. I had a great time. Now, the inaugural ball, this is a great misnomer. The inaugural ball is not black tie. Black tie is sometimes mistakenly called a tuxedo by Americans, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. But the real name for that garment is the dinner jacket. It's part of a dinner suit. It's worn with a black tie, which can be silk or grosgrain, and it can be worn with a fold-over collar or a winged collar. Looks great in a winged collar and a double-breasted variety. It can be either double-breasted or single-breasted, but it must always be peaked lapel. A dinner suit, a tuxedo with notch lapels makes you look like a waiter. Should be avoided. But white tie, which is sometimes mistaken for the stroller, is a cutaway tailcoat, a gleaming white piqué shirt front, a white piqué vest or a white vest of cotton, and white tie, and, of course, the ubiquitous top hat. So that's what I wore for the inaugural ball.
Travis, did you take notes on that?
It doesn't really matter. I can't afford any of that stuff anyway. I wore my usual reporter outfit. I was actually on the ground reporting for Mediaite, and it was a great inauguration, really. I thought, the rain held off, and all the ceremonies went along, the symbolic transition of power, the peaceful transition of power. This was my third time covering an inauguration, and I had a great time. But good Lord, if I was wearing that, I don't think I'd be able to get anything done.
Well, during the inaugural ceremony, my wife looked over and she kind of caught the fact that tears were streaming from my eyes. It was a very, very moving moment during his speech. I thought the speech itself was phenomenal. Short, punchy, and reiterating the Trump agenda. Guess what, folks? You finally got a guy who will do what he says he's going to do. It was really very, very moving. And as I looked at the crowd, this was not a white Republican suburban country club crowd. This was a crowd of people of all creeds and colors with a near and unanimous enthusiasm for Donald Trump's plans to make America great. And then, of course, the event was marred by a small group of paid agitators and hoodlums throwing rocks, throwing bottles, throwing eggs. My own family was attacked in a torrent of eggs. One of my relatives caught a glass bottle in the ankle. As I famously said this week on Infowars, my 27-year-old granddaughter was pushed off the sidewalk and called a Nazi and turned around and cold-cocked this criminal. Self-defense. This is a girl who's not taking any stuff. So, good for her. They really did mar the inaugural, and here's why. They have every right to be there. They have every right to chant. They have every right to gather. They have every right to hand out handbills. They don't have the right to throw rocks and bottles and eggs. They don't have the right to smash ATM screens and bank windows, which they did, rampaging down. But this is George Soros at work. These are paid Soros agents trying to create, an incident.
Absolutely, and I would point out that any rational person on the left immediately condemned the violence. These people were smashing windows. In the hours after the inauguration, Roger, I walked by a McDonald's that had smashed windows, and guess who's cleaning it up? It's other middle-class Americans. If they really think they're sending a message to the man by smashing windows along storefronts in Washington, D.C., they have no idea what they're doing. They're just there to create trouble, create chaos. And let's face it, I think the D.C. police and several of the other agencies that were helping them did a fantastic job. I think there are just some 200-some arrests, and then, like you said, the Women's March the next day was a lot more peaceful and a little more what we're used to when the left.
I'm not sure, Travis, because Infowars interviewed two high-level police officers that they were told by the Obama administration to stand down on enforcement. And I don't think they should have been allowed to throw things. Anyway, Travis Irvine, millennial, libertarian, filmmaker, comedian, and now with Mediaite. Thanks for joining us on the Stone Cold Truth.
Welcome back to Stone Cold Radio, the Stone Cold Truth, radio show on the Genesis Communications Network. I'm your co-host to the American political prophet Roger Stone. I'm Tyler Nixon, and we are back with Travis Irvine, who is a roving media upcoming superstar, Mediaite. We were just talking a little bit about the inauguration, but the bigger picture is the media's immediate attempt to seize on crowd size and things like that. And Steve Bannon came out with a statement this week that they should just shut up and sit down and start listening instead of constantly trying to interject themselves. And Travis, you had some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bannon, he's a little more in touch with middle America, the folks who voted for Trump, the millions of people who voted for Trump. And he's obviously got his finger on the pulse when it comes to Trump's White House. So he's allowed to say that because all I've heard from CNN and many of the other networks and critics in the media of Trump, they're just squawking. They won't stop talking about he's doing this wrong, he's doing this wrong. And, finally, after Steve Bannon makes this statement, I see actual Trump voters on CNN. Roger, your old friend, Smear Kanish, had some on his show, and they were just talking to them and listening.
And I think Smear Kanish, in all honesty, the public pressure I put on him to show both sides. I've known him almost 30 years. I supported him and helped him get a job in the Reagan administration. I met him when he was the right-hand man to Big Frank Rizzo, the Bambino as they called him, also known as the Cisco Kid, former police commissioner and, of course, Democrat mayor of Philadelphia who became a supporter of Richard Nixon's. So I've known Mike a long time, and I have picked at him a little bit publicly to show both sides. He does have, I would have to say, the most objective show on CNN. At least he has provided some balance. But most of them are just over the top. It's just a screed of fake news, of things that aren't true. Trump's attacks on the media are right out of the Nixon playbook. The elites are the only ones who believe the media anymore. The average citizen, he's finally figured out they're in cahoots. That's why he's getting his news from Breitbart now. That's why he's getting his news from Infowar now. That's why he's getting his news from the Daily Caller now. That's why he's getting his news from the Stone Cold Truth radio show.
Travis, you're a millennial, as we pointed out. What do you think? What do you think Trump can do to appeal to the Bernie millennials?
Well, we were talking about things that millennials and really liberals, progressives can like about the first week of the Trump administration. I'd say top of the list right there is TPP. He came out on that, the second or third day, and said we are pulling out of this. And Bernie Sanders even was forced to rightfully put out a statement that says, I support President Trump's action here, and I look forward to working with him on helping middle-income average Americans. And, you guys mentioned earlier, how unusual was it that Trump met with labor leaders? I mean, he really is kind of cherry-picking some of the best stuff from Bernie Sanders' populist campaign and merging it with his own populist agenda.
And very wise to sit down with Theresa May to talk about the nature and framework of a future bilateral trade agreement post-Brexit, the need to invest in the transatlantic defense, and let's face it, from what my sources tell me, they talked about a visit by President Trump to London and Buckingham Palace to meet the Queen. I also, sources tell me that the President asked Prime Minister May to help facilitate a meeting with the President of Turkey. So this is Trump, at his very best. And I'm sure that Theresa May is going to be his Maggie. She's a no-nonsense pragmatist, and she keeps her word. She had her finest hour, if you ask me, this week when she announced the clean break from European Union, what the people of Britain voted for. I'm sure that isn't lost on President Trump.
Yeah, successful American presidents. You look at Macmillan and Kennedy, and as you said, Thatcher and Reagan, and now you're going to have, I think, this restoration of the special relationship, and that seems to be key to a successful presidency in many ways.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Richard Nixon got stuck with Ted Heath, and Henry Kissinger once told me when the three of them had dinner, he said the Prime Minister was passing gas all night. It was not ideal. Heath was, of course, of the left wing of the old Tory party. He was what we call a wet. whereas Mrs. Thatcher was a drive from the conservative wing of her party, perfectly aligned with Ronald Reagan. So you had Nixon, a right-of-center president, I would argue, who never quite had the relationship with someone who's far more liberal than he was, particularly on the question of the Soviets.
Well, Travis, keep up the good work out there with Mediaite, and we appreciate you coming on. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from you again.
Absolutely, always good to be with you guys. Thank you.
Sure, thanks for coming. So you mentioned another inside Nixon story, Roger. I understand there's a book that's just come out. It's going to be a bestseller. I found it just as fascinating as your previous books. Tricky Dick: The Rise and Fall and Rise of Richard Nixon. What can the readers expect? Everybody out there is going to run out and purchase this screed.
Well, I don't want to hopscotch ahead. As you know, I just brought out The Making of the President 2016, how Donald Trump orchestrated a revolution, which I really think is the best book I have written. I wrote it in a very short period of time. I had help from some of my friends to research and help me with some of the segments that they recalled that I didn't recall. But this is the definitive story of how Trump managed to win the biggest upset in American political history. Tricky Dick: The Rise and Fall and Rise of Richard Nixon is the story of the most resilient politician in this century. A guy who literally dominated American politics for a 40-year period as a player, even in exile. And it has a lot of new material that has not yet been widely distributed, learned by Jeff Shepard, who's written a terrific book that demonstrates that the Watergate prosecutors and the Justice Department that went after Richard Nixon were in touch with the prosecution illegally, unfairly, and that the Watergate burglars never got a fair trial. Had they not been convicted, Nixon would not have been taken down. But more precisely, in the impeachment proceedings and the proceedings against the president, these same prosecutors were in constant touch with the judge, Judge Sirica, who tainted his case over and over and over through secret ex parte meetings. Sirica would be impeached if he were alive today, based on these efforts to railroad our 37th president. So, Tricky Dick, I think people will always find Richard Nixon fascinating. He was an introvert in an extrovert's business. He was a painfully shy man who drove himself to dominate his party and, in fact, world politics for, a substantial period of time. But to go back to the Making of the President 2016, this is an unvarnished assessment of how Donald Trump won the nomination and won the general election. You will learn a lot of things you didn't know in this book about Trump and about the Trump campaign, and the fact that I virtually argue that Trump was the Trump campaign, that he won despite his campaign in the primaries because he correctly understood that he could run a totally communications-based strategy, and that these rallies would draw not only thousands of people, but millions of cable TV viewers. And this is where he communicated his message. And then using Twitter and Facebook to successfully communicate around the media directly to the American people. You see, Tyler, this was the tipping point. This was the year in which the mainstream media, CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, and Fox, lost their monopoly. They no longer have a monopoly on the dissemination of political information. And now, I think because of technological advances with the handheld device, more and more voters getting their information online. From Breitbart, from Infowars.com, from The Daily Caller, from The American Spectator, from a dozen, StoneColdTruth.com. The Stone Zone, the archival sister of Stone Cold Truth. So...
I've seen the galleys on this book, and it is really fascinating, Roger. You've really outdone yourself on this book, because I've certainly read the old Jules Witkover, Jack Tremond, the reduxes of the presidential elections previous, and they gave you that media insider look. This is a hard hitting look from the outside, so to speak. Well, the inside from your perspective, but also from a perspective that's not tainted by the typical mainstream media viewpoint, where it's all this inside baseball per se. And if there's one phrase I think that could be said of Trump's election, his victory, is he broke the spell, so to speak, of this. All the traditional sort of saws that they would use. He has no ground game. He can't win without that, and he can't this, and he can't that. He's just
absolutely right.
One by one.
You can grab it at Amazon.com. Thanks for joining us at the Stone Cold Truth.